The soft clink of fine china and muted laughter filled the upscale restaurant. But at a corner table, Benjamin Carlisle sat alone, his dark eyes scanning the menu without much interest. At 40, he had mastered detachment, the effortless kind that came from years of being disappointed by people who promised love and left. A faint tension lingered in his broad shoulders, a shadow of his childhood traumas. His mother had abandoned him, and his father had vanished soon after, leaving him to navigate a world he had no desire to trust. Marriage had never been in his plans. Love was a luxury he had long decided to avoid. Yet he wanted a child, not for romance, not for companionship, but for legacy, a piece of him that would exist beyond the cold walls of his wealth and success. Tonight, however, he wasn't thinking about business or legacy. He was thinking about food, and not just any food. He had come to this restaurant after hearing about the chef who could create magic on a plate, who could take the simplest ingredients and turn them into poetry. "Table for one," he had told the hostess. The waiter had taken his order efficiently, and soon a plate arrived. The duck was perfectly seared, its skin a deep mahogany, glistening under the soft lights. The cherry glaze shimmered like liquid rubies, pooling elegantly around the plate. Each roasted truffle potato was sliced evenly, seasoned with a subtle hint of rosemary and thyme. The microgreens added a burst of fresh green, their delicate stems standing tall as if aware of the meticulous care that had gone into arranging them. He took a bite. The flavors were complex, rich, and harmonious. The tart sweetness of the cherry complemented the fatty succulence of the duck, while the earthy truffle potato grounded the dish. A subtle crunch from the microgreens added texture, and the balsamic drizzle tied it all together with a gentle acidity. Benjamin set down his fork, expression unreadable. He had eaten countless meals prepared by Michelin-star chefs, yet something about this dish lingered on his palate long after the bite. "Who cooked this?" he asked, his voice calm but commanding, a subtle edge that made people listen. "The chef," the waiter replied politely. "Would you like me to inform her you'd like to meet her?" Benjamin inclined his head. He didn't usually do this. He didn't do compliments, and he certainly didn't mingle for pleasure. But something about the food demanded recognition. A few minutes later, a woman appeared in the kitchen doorway, wiping her hands on a pristine apron. She was stunning, dark, glowing skin, long curly hair that framed her face in soft waves, eyes intelligent and confident. "Evelyn, Mr. Carlisle?" she asked, her tone curious yet professional. "Yes," he replied, standing slightly taller. "The food was remarkable. I wanted to meet the person responsible." His voice was straightforward, lacking unnecessary flattery, yet there was an authenticity that made her pause. Most people simply praised appearances, not craftsmanship. Evelyn smiled briefly, a small polite curve of her lips. "Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. It's always my goal to create something memorable." "It was memorable," Benjamin said simply. He handed her a sleek black card. "Here's my number. If you ever want to discuss food or anything else, call me." Evelyn's eyebrows rose slightly. The gesture was unusual. Most customers left without a second thought, and most men, especially wealthy ones, didn't approach the staff. "I'll consider it," she said, pocketing the card, unsure of why she felt a flicker of curiosity. The next week, a call from Benjamin changed her routine. At first, she had been hesitant, reminding herself that a wealthy man's attention often carried ulterior motives. But something in his voice, direct, no nonsense, lacking charm for charm's sake, made her agree to meet him at a small, quiet cafe rather than a high-end restaurant. Their conversations were awkward at first, filled with tentative curiosity. Benjamin didn't make small talk. He asked questions that required honesty, reflection, and insight. Evelyn, who was used to compliments or casual chatter about food, found herself opening up in ways she hadn't expected. She talked about her childhood, her passion for cooking, and the way she wanted to bring joy to people's lives through flavors and experiences. Benjamin listened, not just politely, but with an attention that made her feel seen. Most men she encountered in her world, especially wealthy men, never listened. They talked at people, not to them. He, however, asked, he considered, he remembered, and slowly she began to look forward to their meetings. The curiosity that had once been professional interest grew into something warmer, something she couldn't quite name. One evening, as they strolled past the city lights after dinner, Evelyn finally asked the question that had been lingering in her mind. "Why do you keep coming to see me?" she asked, tucking a stray curl behind her ear. "Why the gifts, the dinners, the attention? You don't seem like the kind of man who invests in people." Benjamin paused, his usual mask of composure cracking for the briefest moment. He looked at her, eyes dark and unreadable. "I appreciate talent. I respect integrity. And I recognize when someone is rare." Evelyn laughed softly, a sound that made the corners of his mouth twitch, though he didn't smile fully. "That sounds like a compliment wrapped in a riddle." "Maybe," he said. "Or maybe it's just truth." Her smile lingered, a mixture of amusement and intrigue. She liked that he was honest, even if blunt. But there was a part of her that wanted to dig deeper, to understand him beyond the walls he carefully constructed. As their friendship, or whatever it was, continued, Benjamin remained distant, controlled, deliberate. He didn't ask for affection, didn't seek companionship. Yet he found himself thinking of her more than he expected. Evelyn, for her part, began to sense a quiet intensity beneath his stoic exterior. He wasn't charming in the traditional sense, but he had a presence that was magnetic, a kind of gravity that drew her closer despite herself. Their dinners became more frequent, their walks longer, conversations deeper. Evelyn found herself laughing more than she had in months. Benjamin, though he never smiled openly, had moments where his gaze softened, where the rigid lines of his face seemed to relax around her presence. And yet the undercurrent of something unspoken lingered between them. Neither fully admitted it, neither fully understood it. But the connection was undeniable. The night ended as usual, with Evelyn returning to her small apartment and Benjamin to his penthouse, but the air between them had shifted. A spark had been lit, subtle but persistent, a quiet promise that something more might exist beyond their carefully constructed worlds. Little did Evelyn know, Benjamin had already begun to imagine a future that included her, a future complicated, risky and impossible to explain in words, a future that would challenge both of them in ways they couldn't yet anticipate. Because while he hadn't come seeking love, fate had other plans, and love in its most unexpected form was quietly making its first appearance in their lives. Evelyn couldn't stop thinking about Benjamin even after their casual dinners and walks had become routine. That night she had gone home and stared at the ceiling, wondering how someone so closed off could make her feel so alive. Their meetings became more frequent, almost daily, though Evelyn reminded herself constantly to maintain boundaries. He was a billionaire, a man from a world far removed from hers, a man with a past that likely included more pain than she could imagine, and yet she found herself wanting to know him, not just the man in the penthouse or the sharp suit, but the man who lingered in quiet moments, who spoke rarely but intentionally, whose presence demanded attention without asking for it. The air in the restaurant was thick with the scent of roasted garlic, fresh herbs and simmering sauces, but Evelyn hardly noticed. She had been thinking about Benjamin all day, his grey eyes, his calm authority, the rare glimpses of softness he allowed her to see. And now seeing him waiting at a quiet corner table made her heart skip. He didn't wave or smile. He simply gestured for her to come closer. She approached cautiously, sensing that this meeting was different from their usual dinners and walks. "Sit," he said, voice calm, commanding. She obeyed, placing herself across from him. His hands were clasped on the table, knuckles white with control. Evelyn studied him, searching for some sign of what was on his mind. Benjamin took a deep breath, his expression carefully neutral. "Evelyn, I like you." Her chest tightened, her heart leapt. You like me?" she echoed, the words trembling in her mouth. "Yes," he said simply. "I like you very much, more than I expected. You intrigue me. You make me think differently. You make me feel." Evelyn's lips curved into a tentative smile. She had sensed his growing attachment, the subtle ways he sought her company, the quiet moments when his guard slipped. And she had felt it too, a warmth, a closeness that was impossible to ignore. "Then, why am I getting the feeling that you're about to tell me something I won't like?" she asked softly, her intuition warning her. Benjamin's grey eyes met hers, sharp and unyielding. "Because I am." He paused, weighing his words carefully. "Evelyn, I want you to be the mother of my child." Her smile faltered. The words hit her like a physical blow. Her chest tightened, her mind spinning. What do you mean?" she whispered. "I mean," he said, leaning forward slightly, "I want you to carry my child. I want to offer you $1 million to do it. After that, you walk away. Never contact me again." Evelyn's mind froze. Her vision blurred slightly as shock gave way to anger, disbelief, and heartbreak. She had developed feelings for him, yes, but she had never imagined that what he wanted from her was this: money. A contract, a transaction, a child as a business deal, not as a bond of love. You want me as a surrogate?" she asked, her voice trembling, disbelief sharpening into hurt. "Yes," he said, his voice steady, almost clinical. "I don't believe in love. I don't want marriage. I don't smile for anyone, but I want a child. You are the only person I trust, the only person whose strength and character I respect enough to consider this." Evelyn recoiled as though struck. You think you can just buy someone's body, someone's life, for $1 million, and you think I would agree to this?" Benjamin's expression softened slightly, though his eyes remained serious. "I'm not asking you to love me. I'm asking you to be rational, to understand the arrangement. You walk away with security, and I walk away with my legacy." She stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. The restaurant fell away around her. She felt dizzy, betrayed, humiliated by the simplicity of his offer. I can't do this," she said, her voice breaking. I care about you, Benjamin, and you want me, as a baby factory." He rose as well, his hands raised slightly in an attempt at calm. "I didn't ask you to care about me. I didn't ask for your love. I only asked for trust. I care about you, Evelyn, but not in the way you hope. This is business." Tears welled in her eyes. She had imagined romance, connection, intimacy, and now it was gone, reduced to a contract, a sum of money, and a request that cut deeper than any betrayal she could imagine. I can't," she whispered again before turning and walking away. The restaurant seemed impossibly large, impossibly suffocating, as she left him standing there, grey eyes watching her retreat. For days afterward, Evelyn cut off all contact. She stopped answering his calls and messages, stopped going to the restaurant, and tried to lose herself in work and friends. But the ache in her chest, the memories of their conversations, the glimpses of vulnerability he had shown all lingered, haunting her like a shadow she could not shake. Her friends noticed the change. One afternoon over coffee, her best friend Jasmine leaned forward, concern etched on her face. "Eve, why won't you accept his offer? $1 million? That's life-changing money. Why are you hurting yourself like this?" Evelyn shook her head, tears threatening to spill. "It's not about the money. I love him, Jasmine, and he doesn't love me. Not really. He wants me for something else. How do you love someone who doesn't love you, but wants you as a means to an end?" Jasmine's eyes softened, and she reached across the table, gripping her hand. "You can't make him love you, but you also can't ignore your feelings. You have to decide if you can accept him for who he is or walk away." But walking away was easier said than done. Every corner of her life reminded her of him: the smell of aged wine, the taste of perfectly seared duck, the quiet confidence of a man who did not smile for anyone. She had given him her trust, her attention, her heart, and he had asked her to discard it, to reduce it to a transaction. Meanwhile, Benjamin did not give up. Days turned into weeks, and still he attempted to reach her. Messages, calls, even attempts to meet in neutral spaces, all ignored. Yet each failed attempt only deepened his resolve. He had misjudged the timing, the words, the approach. He had allowed his emotions to remain hidden, to mask his true intentions, because the truth, the part he could not yet say aloud, was that he had fallen for her truly, deeply, and the thought of losing her, of allowing her to walk away forever, ignited something he had long buried: fear. He did not understand it, could not rationalize it. A man who had avoided love, avoided intimacy, now found himself vulnerable in ways he had sworn never to be, and yet he was powerless to change what he felt. Evelyn, meanwhile, tried to find solace in her work. She poured herself into recipes, experimented with flavors, and created new dishes that dazzled her patrons. But even as she crafted perfection on a plate, her mind wandered to Benjamin Carlisle, the man who had captivated her mind, challenged her heart, and ultimately betrayed her trust. Every time she closed her eyes, she could see him, grey eyes intent and unwavering, his presence commanding yet strangely comforting. And every time she tried to push him away, a part of her rebelled, reminding her that feelings were not so easily dismissed. It was a cruel paradox. She loved him, yet he wanted her for a purpose she could not reconcile with love. She wanted to forgive, to embrace the connection they had built, but pride hurt, and self-respect demanded she walk away. Weeks later, as she packed her things at the restaurant to resign quietly from her position, she felt a strange mix of liberation and sorrow. Benjamin's pursuit had forced her to confront truths about herself, her desire for love, her unwillingness to be used, and the courage to demand more than a transactional existence. She glanced at the empty table where he had once sat, imagined his serious grey eyes studying her, and whispered almost to herself, "I won't be yours that way. I won't be just your plan." The rain fell in relentless sheets, turning the city streets into rivers of reflections. Evelyn hurried along the sidewalk, her umbrella barely shielding her from the downpour. Her heart still ached from the conversation that had shattered her world, the offer, the cold transaction, the shock of realizing that Benjamin Carlisle, the man she had grown to care for, wanted her for a purpose that had nothing to do with love. She had tried to move on. She had immersed herself in work at the restaurant, creating new dishes, experimenting with flavors, even laughing with friends. But at night, when the city grew quiet and the rain pattered against her window, her thoughts always returned to him, the man who had been more than she expected, more than she had ever allowed herself to hope for. Benjamin, however, was not idle. He had expected her to walk away, to take time and distance as a final answer. But he couldn't. Every hour without her felt like a weight, pressing against his chest. Every meal without her critique or laughter felt hollow. Every empty apartment felt colder. He had underestimated the power of her presence, and now he was ready to confront what he had tried to deny. That night he found her. She had gone to the late-night market to gather fresh ingredients, hoping the mundane task would distract her. He tracked her, silent as a shadow, until he spotted her under the flickering lights. Shoulders hunched, curls dampened by the rain. Evelyn, his voice was low, almost drowned by the rainfall. But she heard it immediately. She turned sharply, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock and apprehension. "Benjamin," she whispered, clutching her coat tightly. "You shouldn't be here. It's raining." I don't care about the rain," he interrupted, stepping closer, water dripping from the edges of his coat. "I care about you." Her breath caught. You wanted me to be your—" "Stop," his voice was firm, desperate. "Stop saying that. I was wrong. I was selfish. I was terrified of what I felt. And instead of being honest, I offered you a deal instead of myself. I didn't realize until it was too late that I didn't just want a child. I want you." Evelyn's heart raced. She had imagined this moment in fragments, imagined him explaining, imagined him apologizing. But hearing it now, seeing the raw sincerity in his eyes, made the ache in her chest deepen. You love me?" she asked, voice trembling, almost disbelieving. "Yes," he said, his voice breaking just slightly. "I do. I've tried not to, but I can't. I care about you, Evelyn, more than I've ever cared about anything. And I'm sorry for the way I hurt you, for the words I said, for treating you like a transaction. I was wrong, and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make it right if you'll let me." She felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. The mixture of relief and lingering hurt made her voice barely a whisper. How do I know you mean it? How do I know you're not just afraid of being alone?" Benjamin took a step closer, his hand brushing hers through the rain, sending a shiver down her spine. "Because I can't imagine my life without you. Because every moment away from you is unbearable. Because I finally understand that love isn't weakness, it's everything. And I want everything with you, Evelyn. Not just a child. Not just a deal, only you." The rain intensified, drumming around them, as if the heavens themselves were bearing witness to the confession. Evelyn hesitated, heart racing, torn between caution and desire. She had loved him silently, and the sight of him standing there, vulnerable yet commanding, made her knees weak. Finally, she whispered, I don't know if I can trust you. He took her hands in his, cold from the rain but firm and steady. I will prove it to you. I promise to be honest. I promise to care for you, to protect you, to love you, not as a surrogate, not as a contract, but as a woman I can't imagine my life without. Please, give me a chance. The rain fell harder, the city around them becoming a blur of silver and water. And in that moment, something shifted. Evelyn saw the raw sincerity in his eyes, the vulnerability he had never shown anyone. She felt the depth of his emotions, the love that had always been there but masked by fear and control. She let out a shaky breath and, for the first time in weeks, allowed herself to step closer, closing the distance between them. I need to believe you, she admitted. Benjamin smiled, a rare, genuine smile that touched the corners of his eyes. Then believe me. I love you, Evelyn. I have loved you since the first moment I saw you in that kitchen, crafting magic on a plate. I want us, not just a child, not just a deal. I want you. Her tears spilled freely now, mingling with the rain as she nodded. I love you too, she whispered. He pulled her into a close embrace, the rain drenching them both as they stood on the empty street. In that embrace, the past weeks of pain, confusion, and betrayal began to wash away, replaced by the warmth of reconciliation. 2 days later, Benjamin whisked her away to a secluded getaway, a hidden gem of nature. Far from prying eyes, far from city noise, the journey was quiet, contemplative, both of them lost in thoughts that words couldn't fully express. The destination was breathtaking, a waterfall cascading into a crystal-clear pool, surrounded by lush greenery and jagged rocks glistening under the afternoon sun. The air was thick with mist and the scent of wet earth, intoxicating and peaceful. Evelyn turned to him, feeling a surge of emotion. Benjamin, this is perfect. He cupped her face, his thumb brushing a tear streaked by the mist. Not as perfect as you, he said softly. I wanted it to be. A place where it's just us. No distractions, no expectations, just being together. They stayed in a cabin carved from natural stone and wood, its large windows offering uninterrupted views of the waterfall and surrounding forest. Evelyn could hear the water crashing below, even as they sat on the balcony, wrapped in blankets, sipping hot chocolate. They explored the area, walking hand in hand, slipping over smooth stones and laughing when one of them stumbled. It was the first time in weeks that Evelyn felt completely safe, completely at ease. Benjamin's presence was grounding. They skinned deep, rain mixing with waterfall spray, until he pulled her close again. This time it wasn't just words, they kissed deeply, passionately, allowing months of longing and restrained desire to flow freely. For the first time they connected completely, emotionally, physically and spiritually. The night brought intimacy deeper than either had anticipated. The cabin became their sanctuary, the waterfall their witness. No distractions, no judgments, just them, two souls mending, exploring and surrendering to love. The morning air was crisp and fragrant with pine as Evelyn and Benjamin walked hand in hand along the trail that led to their favorite lookout point above the waterfall. Months had passed since the night of confession in the rain, since their secluded getaway had sealed their bond. Their love had grown stronger, tempered by understanding, trust, and the intimacy of knowing one another completely. Benjamin had kept his promises. He was no longer the distant, stoic billionaire she had first met. He smiled freely, teased gently, and laughed wholeheartedly, while Evelyn had let herself love again, allowing vulnerability without fear. Together, they had created a rhythm, a sanctuary in which love could thrive. As they reached the lookout point, Evelyn noticed the faint glimmer of something golden tucked among the wildflowers. Benjamin turned to her, eyes bright with anticipation and something deeper, a seriousness tempered by tenderness. Evelyn, he began, taking both her hands in his, these past months with you have been transformative. You've shown me what love is, what it feels like, what it demands. I can't imagine my life without you in it. Without your laughter, your warmth, your heart. Evelyn's chest tightened. She had dreamt of this moment, of him speaking from the heart. But hearing the words aloud made the world narrow to just the two of them. Benjamin bent down slightly, reaching into his coat pocket. He drew out a small, elegant box and opened it, revealing a diamond ring that caught the sunlight and fractured it into 1,000 brilliant sparks. "Evelyn Thompson," he said, voice steady but full of emotion, "will you marry me?" Her eyes welled with tears, hands trembling as she took in the ring, his gaze, the sincerity that radiated from every fiber of his being. "Yes," she whispered, barely able to form the words. "Yes, Benjamin. 1,000 times yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and she felt the weight of their future settle into that single perfect moment. They embraced, the roar of the waterfall below echoing the joy in their hearts. Their wedding was intimate yet breathtaking. Benjamin's vast estate, usually a place of solitude and business, had been transformed into a garden of elegance. White roses lined the aisle. Soft candlelight flickered in ornate glass holders, and the scent of fresh jasmine hung in the air. Friends and family gathered, but the focus remained on the couple, on the bond that had been tested, broken and reforged. Evelyn's gown was a masterpiece of lace and silk, hugging her curves with grace, accentuating the radiance of her dark skin. Her long curls cascaded over her shoulders, and a delicate veil framed her glowing face. Benjamin wore a classic black tuxedo, but he was transformed not by attire, but by the love he carried in his gaze. As they exchanged vows beneath a floral arch, overlooking the waterfall that had witnessed their first night of intimacy, tears flowed freely. Benjamin spoke of promises kept, lessons learned, and a love that had conquered fear. Evelyn's words were filled with courage, honesty, and the depth of her unwavering devotion. When they kissed, the world seemed to fall away, leaving only the two of them, bound not by contracts or money but by heart and soul. Months later, Evelyn discovered she was pregnant, and the news filled both their hearts with uncontainable joy. Benjamin was present at every doctor's visit, holding her hand, marveling at the life growing inside her. He smiled openly now, his eyes sparkling with a happiness he had never known. As the months passed, their excitement grew. They prepared a nursery filled with soft pastels, plush toys, and tiny clothes folded with meticulous care. Benjamin, once reserved and unaccustomed to domestic life, found himself assembling cribs with the same precision he applied to his business empire. Evelyn laughed at his seriousness, watching him fumble with instructions, yet take immense pride in creating a safe haven for their children. Finally, the day arrived. The hospital room was quiet but filled with anticipation. Evelyn gripped Benjamin's hand as contractions intensified. Hours later, the cries of their newborns filled the air. Two perfect, healthy babies, a boy and a girl. Benjamin held them both in his arms, overwhelmed by a love he had never imagined possible. "They are perfect," he whispered, tears sliding down his cheeks just like their mother. Evelyn rested her head against his shoulder, exhausted yet euphoric. "We made them together," she murmured, "and now we have a family." Life settled into a beautiful rhythm. Benjamin embraced his role as a father with devotion, his stoicism replaced by laughter, playfulness and tenderness. Evelyn thrived in her new identity, as both a mother and a woman deeply loved, cherished by a man who had once been afraid to love at all. Their home was filled with joy, the sounds of children's laughter echoing through sunlit rooms. Benjamin often caught himself watching Evelyn with the twins, marveling at her strength, beauty, and unwavering heart. She had changed his life in ways no business deal, no fortune could ever accomplish. Together they celebrated milestones, the first steps, first words, birthdays, and quiet evenings by the fireplace, simply enjoying each other's presence. Benjamin had learned to smile freely, to show affection, and to revel in the love he had once denied himself. Evelyn had learned that love could be patient, fierce and transformative, and that the man she had once feared to trust was now her partner, confidant and soulmate. One evening, as the twins slept, Benjamin and Evelyn sat on the balcony wrapped in a shared blanket, watching the waterfall in the distance. "Can you believe how far we've come?" Evelyn asked softly, leaning against him. Benjamin kissed her temple, his hand resting over hers. "I used to think love was unnecessary. I used to think happiness was something I could only achieve through control. But now I know it's you, it's us. It's everything we've built together. I am complete, Evelyn, because of you." Tears glistened in her eyes. "I love you." "Benjamin, always I love you too," he replied, his voice steady and full of certainty. "Forever." And in that moment, beneath the stars and beside the cascading waterfall, their hearts beat as one, finally. Completely and eternally. Their story had begun with uncertainty, grown through pain and hesitation, and blossomed into a love that defied fear, transcended past scars, and created a family filled with joy, laughter, and hope. Thank you, my dear listeners, for joining me on this heartfelt journey of love, redemption, and second chances. Love Beyond a Deal is more than just a story. It's a reminder that real love isn't about money or convenience, but about seeing someone's soul and choosing them over and over again. Your support, your comments, and your presence mean the world to me. Together we keep love alive in our hearts and in our community. Stay inspired, stay connected, and always believe in the power of true love. With love and gratitude, Vintage Mike Tales.